the twin stars above. Aurelius Outpost painted the settlement in ribbons of copper and amethyst, their light sliding over a district where human prefab modules stood uneasily beside the grown, coral-like structures of the Relari. The alien buildings pulsed gently beneath their veined surfaces, as if alive and breathing. Dust drifted lazily across the central square where both species crossed paths without ever truly meeting. 3 years after the armistice, coexistence still felt experimental, fragile enough to crack under a careless word. Near the barren communal planter, an empty plot that had stubbornly refused to sprout, a single seed stood Sirael, a Relari refugee whose indigo skin seemed to drink in the colored sunlight. Her limbs were thicker now, heavier than any member of her species had ever evolved to carry, the result of the long cryo journey that had gone wrong. Her joints shivered under the weight as nearby human children paused their games, pointing, whispering, cataloging differences their parents pretended not to notice. She had come seeking sanctuary. What she found was a polite cage woven from distance. But 2 young voices were about to crack that distance wide open. And what followed would force the entire outpost, and the distant councils watching from orbit to confront the people they had become. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another story like this. And tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We read every single one. The courtyard of the integration hall throbbed with the heavy quiet of forced courtesy. Human settlers walked in careful clusters, lowering their conversations to murmurs whenever Sirael crossed their periphery. She recognized the rhythm by now. Eyes that swept over her, judged then flicked away and practiced denial. The medics had named her condition systemic cryoflux retention, a phrase that meant nothing in her language. Relari bodies were never meant to swell. Her people didn't store mass, didn't alter shape. Not until the war. Not until exile. Not until now. The children were the most honest. They didn't know how to disguise cruelty. Look at the chunky alien, a ginger-haired boy snorted, loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. My aunt says the blue ones are supposed to be skinny. Maybe that one broke. Their laughter scattered across the square like thrown gravel. Sirael kept her gaze fixed on the colony bulletin, pretending to study notices she'd already memorized. Her breathing rig, an elegant ring of metal and membrane that compensated for Aurelius's thin, nitrogen-rich air, clicked softly against her throat with each breath. From the admin tower, Director Marin Solis stepped out, her expression polished into that diplomatic smile everyone knew wasn't real. "Sirael," she said, her tone painfully gentle. "We need to revisit your housing placement. The family assigned to your unit. Well, they've expressed worries, cultural friction, and space limitations." The translation was obvious. No human household wanted the overweight alien sharing their walls. "I understand," Sirael replied, because any other answer would only prolong the humiliation. She drifted toward the garden beds where volunteers knelt in the soil, coaxing Terran vegetables to adapt to Aurelius's stubborn terrain. No one acknowledged her approach. She lingered at the edge, watching their hands sink into the earth, hands building something rooted, something she couldn't seem to belong to. Near the recreation yard, a man supervised 2 young girls, twins, around 7, with dark hair tied in mismatched ribbons. She had noticed them before, observant, quiet. Their father carried the posture of someone who'd once lived on battlefields, shoulders squared, scars etched across both forearms, eyes that scanned every space without ever settling. One of the twins, the one wearing a pale yellow band, lifted her head and stared openly at Sirael. Not mockingly, not nervously, just seeing her, really seeing her. Their eyes locked across the courtyard. Sirael's secondary heart fluttered unevenly. The girl whispered to her sister, tugged her father's sleeve, then pointed. Sirael looked away immediately, heat blooming beneath her indigo skin. Curiosity was tolerable. Pity was unbearable. She started toward the converted storage pod she'd been given. Bare walls, thin bedding, no window, and she could feel their eyes following her steps. Behind her, the twins began drifting in her direction, ignoring their father's soft warnings, and in their small hands, they carried something Sirael did not yet understand, something that would alter everything. A metallic knock jarred her from her thoughts. Visitors never came. Hello? A tiny voice called through the door. "Are you in there?" Sirael froze, breath catching inside her rig. Through the narrow slit of the metal window, Sirael spotted them, the same twins from the courtyard, faces squished against the glass, breath fogging the pain. A few steps behind them stood their father, arms folded, posture sharp with quiet vigilance. Sirael hesitated, then unlatched the door. "We wanted to see you," the girl with the soft yellow ribbon announced. Her badge read Emery. Her sister's badge read Solon. "Your skin is blue," Solon said with delighted awe. "Really blue, like the ocean pictures from old Earth books." Sirael blinked, unused to such open fascination. "Yes," she murmured. "My people are born this way. Does that thing hurt?" Emery asked, pointing gently toward the breathing ring snug around her neck. "No, it supports me," Sirael said. "Your air is thin for us." "Our dad says everyone needs a little help sometimes," Solon added. "He has a machine for his leg. It broke during the war." Their father stepped closer, his prosthetic knee releasing a faint hiss with each movement. Up close, Sirael noticed the weary creases around his eyes, the threads of silver in his dark hair. "Girls, try not to ambush people," he said, though his tone held warmth rather than scolding. "I'm Darren. These two are enthusiastic about meeting every living thing they spot." He offered his hand. It startled her. Humans rarely initiated touch. Many avoided it entirely. She slowly extended her own hand, her amber-tipped fingers curling around his. His grip was steady, warm, unafraid. "I am Sirael," she said quietly. "We know," Solon chirped. "We asked Director Solis. She told us your whole planet got blown up." "Solon," Darren snapped softly. "But it's true, right?" Emery asked, her voice small and careful. "Your home, it's gone?" Sirael's throat tightened. "Yes, it is no more." The twins went still, their hands intertwining instinctively. "We don't have our mom anymore," Emery whispered. "She died when we were really little. Dad says she lives in the sky now." "The sky is very far," Sirael said gently. Both girls nodded. Darren took a slow breath. "We should let you rest." They only wanted to say hello. "Why?" Sirael asked before she could swallow the question. "Why speak to me?" The twins shared a glance. Then Emery answered with blunt honesty. "Because everyone pretends you're invisible." Solon nodded. "We see it." They look away. "They act like you're not standing right there." "We know what that feels like," Emery finished. "It's not nice." Something inside Sirael's chest coiled tight, painfully tight. These children recognized what the adults refused to admit. "Thank you," she said softly, "for greeting me." "Can we come again?" Solon asked eagerly. "We could bring food. Dad makes the best starberry sandwiches. Or maybe we just talk?" Darren gently rested his hands on their shoulders. "Let's not overwhelm her." But Sirael felt her own voice answering. "I would welcome company, if you truly wish to visit." The twins lit up, pure joy, bright and sudden. Sirael felt moisture prick at her eyes. "Tomorrow," Emery declared triumphantly, "after lessons, we'll bring games." Darren lingered a moment. "They're good kids," he said quietly. "Better than most of us deserve, I think." He hesitated, studying Sirael as if seeing something others didn't. "If they ever bother you, tell me." "They do not burden me," Sirael said. "They are light." A flicker crossed Darren's face, surprise, maybe recognition. He nodded once and followed his daughters away. Sirael remained in the doorway long after they vanished. Something warm and unfamiliar, pulsing in her chest, something she had believed frozen dead with her world. But inside the administrative tower, Director Marin Solis had observed the entire exchange through the colony's surveillance grid, and the look in her eyes suggested that this sudden flicker of kindness on Aurelius Outpost was about to complicate things far more than anyone expected. The next afternoon, the twins returned exactly as promised, Darren trailing behind them. They carried sandwiches wrapped in cloth, a tattered deck of cards, and an avalanche of questions. They sat just outside Sirael's shelter, the interior far too cramped for 4 people. Colonists passing by slowed, stared openly, whispered with sharpened tones. "Isn't that the Darren girls with that alien?" Darren's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Emery and Solon ignored everyone except Sirael. Sirael tried to describe Chironis, her lost ocean world, its towering reef cities grown from living stone, its harmonic festivals where entire communities sang in subsonic waves that shimmered through the water. She painted memories of a place that survived only inside her. The twins listened with breathless wonder. "Does it hurt?" Emery finally asked. "Losing all of it?" "It does," Serail whispered. "More than I can say." They taught her a human card game, War, simple, ruled by chance alone. Her large trembling fingers fumbled with the tiny cards, but the girls were endlessly patient, giggling each time Serail dropped a few and scrambled to gather them. And for the first time since she arrived on Aurelius Outpost, Serail felt the faintest echo of belonging. The twins had changed something. Serail fumbled with the human playing cards, her wide fingers trying to pinch the edges without bending them. Emery and Solon simply helped, sliding the cards into place without a single remark about her difficulty. But others were watching. A group of children drifted closer, drawn by the novelty of seeing the twins sit with an outsider. One boy, bold in the way only the ignorant could be, pointed directly at Serail. "Why are you playing with the fat alien?" he asked Emery. "Because she's nice," Emery said, still counting cards. "And her name is Serail. Calling her anything else is rude." "But she is fat," the boy insisted. "So?" Solon snapped. "Lots of people are big. Nobody calls them names." "That's different," the boy muttered. "They're human." Darren, who had been sipping his weak tea nearby, set the cup down with deliberate care. "All right," he said, voice suddenly very level. "If you're not here to behave, you can move along." But Serail felt it. Even innocence could rot in the presence of prejudice. Their small kindness was already being corroded by her presence. She began to rise, the instinct to retreat overwhelming. Emery caught her hand, small fingers curling around her own trembling ones. "Don't go," she whispered. "They're only acting like that because they don't understand anything." "You make us feel brave," Solon added. "When we're with you, we don't care if we look different." More children gathered, whispering between themselves, uncertain whether to mock or stay quiet. Emery and Solon stood in front of Serail instinctively, two tiny guards shielding her with their bodies. Darren rose and suddenly the air shifted. His military posture, the unmistakable weight of someone who had commanded troops, sent the other children scattering. "That's enough," he said calmly. "Anyone who can't be decent, go." The crowd thinned. Darren sat back down, rubbing his prosthetic knee. "Sorry," he murmured to Serail. "Kids repeat what they hear at home, and what they hear isn't always worth listening to." They played until the twin suns drifted low over the horizon. When the family finally headed home, Serail remained outside, staring up at the strange stars of Aurelius Outpost. None of them belonged to her. Her tablet vibrated. "A message from Director Solis. We need to review your integration status. Report to my office at 0900, mandatory." Across the colony, Darren was simultaneously discovering that his daughter's compassion had placed his family under scrutiny far sharper than any he'd faced in uniform. The next morning, Serail climbed to the top floor of the administrative tower. Director Solis's office was all glass, panoramic views, and embedded surveillance tech glinting faintly in the ceiling panels. Serail stood before the desk. No invitation to sit came. "Your integration data is concerning," Solis began, her voice clipped. 3 months on the outpost. Minimal social progression. Limited human interaction. She tapped a key. Footage played on the wall screen. Serail seated on the ground playing cards with Emery and Solon. "And now," Solis continued, "you've involved minors in unregulated contact. The Darren family already attracts attention. Darren is a wounded veteran with documented psychological stress. His children are under observational review. Their connection to you complicates an already delicate situation." "They came to me," Serail said quietly. "That's irrelevant. Your presence triggers unease. When you form bonds with vulnerable individuals, it raises questions about boundaries." Something cold pooled in Serail's chest. "You want me to avoid the children. I want you to understand the consequences of ignoring cultural sensitivity," Solis replied. "Refugees must be aware of the discomfort they cause. Blending in means minimizing disruption." "To vanish without leaving," Serail murmured. Solis's expression sharpened. "I'm trying to help you face reality. You are a displaced alien seeking sanctuary among humans. The Rilari people destroyed themselves through their own conflict. We are offering you safety, not equivalence. There is a distinction." The word struck with the force of a physical blow. "Safety, not equality." Darren's situation is precarious, Solis continued. One poor evaluation and his daughters can be removed. Your involvement with them does not benefit their case. If you care for these children even a little, distance yourself. Her translator parsed the message with chilling clarity. Protect the twins by abandoning them. I understand, Suriel said. She left the office on unsteady legs. Through the windowed corridor, she could already see Emery and Solon waiting outside her shelter, a basket between them. They had come again. Of course they had. Suriel considered hiding, but before she could move, Darren appeared from between two residential modules. He strode straight toward her, his expression storm-touched. We need to talk, he said. Somewhere no one can overhear. They walked toward the colony perimeter where the transparent dome met the barren, rust-colored plains. Beyond it, wind carved dust into soft spirals. Solis called me in this morning, Darren said without preamble. Said my girl spending time with you shows a lapse in my judgment. Implied it could affect my custody review. I will stay away, Suriel said instantly. I won't endanger your daughters. That's not why I came. Darren turned to her, jaw tight but eyes steady. I'm done living according to fear and politics. My daughters see something good in you. And truth be told, he exhaled sharply. They're usually right about people. He looked out over the desert beyond the dome. And I'm tired of pretending that silence keeps us safe. Prejudice, she had learned, often disguises itself as procedure. And Director Solis could file her incident reports until the archives collapsed under their weight. Darren had weathered harsher threats in darker places. He wasn't about to let a bureaucrat bully him away from the one presence that made his daughters feel a little less alone. He hesitated before speaking again, voice lower, almost raw. Someone who makes me feel less alone, too. Suriel didn't know how to react. The war-torn human sitting across from her was choosing her, choosing connection over whatever caution should have kept him distant. I don't comprehend, she whispered. Why risk this for me? Darren stared past her into a memory only he could see. 3 years ago, I woke up in a field tent after the siege of Red Meridian. Half my leg gone. They didn't see a soldier, they saw damaged cargo someone forgot to discard. His jaw flexed. I see those same looks when people watch you. And I remember exactly how much they hurt. You have daughters to protect, Suriel murmured gently. And I have daughters to teach, he countered. If I show them that kindness is selective, that people can be treated like debris when convenient. What have I actually protected? What kind of humans would I be raising? Suriel's breathing rig clicked softly in conflicted thought. You are either astonishingly brave or astonishingly foolish. Probably both, Darren said, extending his hand. We're already labeled as problems. Might as well be problems together. Her fingers brushed his palm, steady, warm, grounding. A decision forged not from desperation, but from the courage of someone done hiding from shadows. But high in her glass office, Director Solis watched the moment with cold calculation. She made a discreet call to central authority. And 600 kilometers away, in the fortified capital of Naran Prime, officials began drafting orders that would test how much compassion the colony of Aurelius Outpost truly possessed. The days settled into a rhythm. Card games in the observation dome became a ritual. Emery and Solon arrived every afternoon with game boards, snacks, and an endless barrage of questions. Darren accompanied them, sometimes playing, more often watching with a quiet contentment Suriel found strangely comforting. The colony noticed. Whispers turned into muttered complaints. Mutters hardened into formal grievances. 3 weeks later, Suriel received a housing directive, a reassignment to a sterile living unit in the designated refugee zone, 15 kilometers from the main settlement. Officially an upgrade. Practically an exile, Darren drove her there in his old crawler. The twins squeezed in behind them, clinging to Suriel's few belongings. The refugee district was newly built. Precise rows of identical prefab pods, spotless walkways, no gardens, no gathering spots. A place designed for containment, not community. It's nice, Solon said, though uncertainty tugged at her voice. Helping Suriel unpack took 10 minutes. Afterward, they all sat in the bright, bare unit pretending it felt like anything other than isolation. We can still visit, Emery declared firmly. Dad can bring us. Of course, Darren said, but doubt threaded quietly through the words. Suriel understood the truth. 15 kilometers wasn't far unless you were children, unless fuel rations tightened, unless visits required planning instead of spontaneity. Friendship turned into logistics. Perhaps this arrangement is reasonable, Cyril murmured. You have your lives, and this place is cleaner. Cleaner? Solon's voice spiked in frustration. You sound like Director Solus using pretty words to hide ugly choices. It is true, Emery added softly. They moved you because they want us apart. Solon's eyes filled. It's cruel. It's really, really cruel. Emery wrapped an arm around her sister. Are you going to stop trying, Cyril? Just because of this? I do not know, Cyril confessed. I am very tired. Darren knelt in front of her, meeting her gaze. I know that exhaustion, the kind that makes quitting feel like self-preservation. He took her hand gently. But if we give up now, they win. And my girls learn that when someone becomes inconvenient, you walk away. Solon sniffed. You make us feel braver. When we're with you, being different isn't scary. You don't fit in either, and you still keep trying. The words cracked something open inside Cyril, a wound or a healing she couldn't distinguish. I will not give up, she heard herself say. Then neither will we, the twins declared in unison. Darren rose. We'll come this weekend. The weekend after. Every weekend until they physically blocked the roads. Cyril watched them leave as Aurelius Outpost's twin suns dipped below the horizon, their crawler shrinking into a trail of settling dust. In her empty, immaculate unit, she felt something she hadn't felt since the fall of her homeworld. She felt chosen. But back in the main colony, a transport from Central Authority descended through the evening haze. The officials stepping out carried sealed orders. Orders that would reveal exactly how steep the price of defiance would be. By Friday, every bulletin screen displayed the announcement. Mandatory community assembly. All residents required. 1,800 hours. The hall filled beyond capacity. Darren took seats near the rear. The twins pressed close, anxious. Director Solus stepped to the podium beside two uniformed authority envoys. We've convened this assembly, she began, to address integration, compliance, and escalating concerns regarding behavioral trends, Administrator. Solus shifted her weight, her voice steady but sharpened by authority. Specifically, unsupervised interactions between colony residents and off-world refugees. Darren felt Emery go rigid beside him. Solon's small hand clamped around his. These encounters, though perhaps born from goodwill, create legal, ethical, and developmental complications, Solus continued. Human children cannot give informed consent to cross-species bonding. Such interactions require parental oversight and psychological assessment. That's a load of scrap, someone muttered behind Darren. Solus didn't react. Therefore, by directive of Central Authority, new integration protocols will take effect immediately. All interactions between human, colonists, and refugee civilians must occur under certified supervision. Unsupervised contact is suspended until further evaluation. The hall erupted, shouted objections, scuffling feet, voices overlapping in chaos. Darren didn't move. He was already assessing the fallout. A second official, a tall man with a polished insignia, stepped forward. These measures safeguard everyone involved. Order prevents unnecessary complications. Order? A colonist shouted. You're criminalizing decency. We're enforcing prudent structure, the man replied evenly. Structure, not sentiment. A woman stood near the front. We don't know what those outsiders might be teaching our kids. Maybe compassion. Darren heard himself say and realized he was already standing. Maybe the lesson is seeing beyond appearance. Dozens of eyes turned. Emery and Solon rose too, one on each side of him, as if drawn by instinct. Mr. Darren, Director Solus said smoothly, we acknowledge your daughters have formed an attachment. Their intentions aren't in question. But intention does not erase potential danger. What danger? Darren asked, his voice echoing in the chamber. The danger that my daughters might grow up understanding dignity? That refugees are people instead of problems? The danger, the female envoy replied, is psychological disruption. Exposure to non-human beings during formative years can result in identity, confusion, and elevated empathy. It can create empathy, Solon cut in. The hall fell silent. A 7-year-old had just stopped a room full of adults with one word. Cyril is our friend, Emery said, her voice trembling but bold. She doesn't scare us. She doesn't hurt us. She's just sad, alone. Everyone pretends she isn't there. And now you want to push her farther away because… What, because her skin is blue? Because she's different? Emery, Solace began. No, Emery said, stepping forward. You're making cruel rules and calling them protective. That's wrong. And when something's wrong, you're supposed to say so. This is wrong. Her words rippled across the assembly. Parents shifted uneasily. Even the officials couldn't mask the flicker of doubt that crossed their faces. Darren rested his hands gently on his daughter's shoulders. My girls just spoke the truth I came here to deliver. These protocols fix a problem that doesn't exist. They punish connection, and they teach our children that when authority tells you to abandon someone, you obey. The room spiraled again into shouting, until the female envoy raised her palms for silence. The protocols are final, she declared. They will be enforced starting Monday. Families who violate them will be subject to administrative review. That includes re-evaluating parental fitness when judgment appears compromised. A hush fell over the hall. Custody review? Darren felt the twins tremble as the meaning struck them. He leaned down, murmuring, "We're leaving. Stay beside me." They moved toward the exit. Before crossing the threshold, Darren turned back. You can't regulate compassion out of existence, he said. But you can build a world where compassion becomes rebellion. Decide which world you want to live in. They stepped into the amber and violet dusk of a realist outpost. The twins' tears broke free as soon as the door shut behind them. Are they going to take us? Solon whispered. No, Darren said firmly. Not if I have anything to say about it. He knelt to eye level with them, voice steady though fire churned beneath his ribs. Here's the truth. If we keep visiting Serial, they might review my custody. They might try to claim I'm unfit. That's a real possibility. Emery and Solon absorbed his words silently, their eyes wide, their breath shaking. But if we stop visiting to protect ourselves, Darren continued softly, we become the kind of people who abandon a friend the moment it becomes difficult. And that I won't teach you. He took both girls' hands. So here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow we visit Serial, and the day after that, if they come for me, we stand together. We fight it. What if we lose? Solon asked, voice barely audible. Then we lose together, Darren said. But we lose knowing we stood for something that mattered. The twins exchanged a look, a wordless pact. Okay, Emery whispered. We fight. 15 kilometers away, inside her immaculate silent prefab unit, Serial received a notification on her tablet. She was now required to undergo psychiatric assessment. Her refugee classification was under review, and her contact with human minors had been labeled potentially inappropriate. She read the notice once, then again, a third time, and in the stillness that followed, she made a decision, one that would force the entire colony to decide what and who they were willing to protect. Saturday dawned pale and cool over Aurelius outpost. Darren was already awake when Emery and Solon appeared at his door, fully dressed, faces set with unwavering determination. We're ready, Emery announced as if declaring the start of a mission. They drove through the silent outer roads toward the refugee ward. The comms unit hissed with automated alerts. Revised integration statutes now enforced. Report any unsanctioned contact between colony personnel and non-human migrants to central authority. Darren shut the comms off with a flick of his thumb. As they neared the sector, he slowed. A cluster of colonists stood gathered outside. Serial's living module, humans he recognized. The settlement's chief mechanic. The school instructor. The medical officer. Behind them, hand-painted signs fluttered in the sharp morning breeze. Friendship is not a violation. Refugees are not threats. The mechanic stepped forward when he saw Darren. Figured you'd come. Today, he said. Figured you shouldn't walk into this alone. Darren blinked, thrown. What is all this? Call it a protest or unity, or just basic decency, the mechanic replied. We watched those officials threaten families for choosing kindness. Some of us decided that was one line too far. You know they'll go after you, Darren said quietly. Probably, the man replied with a shrug. But I didn't leave a burning earth just to stand by while new cruelties grow in its shadow. The door to Serial's unit slid open. She stepped out hesitantly, her breathing harness clicking in distress, her luminous eyes wide with confusion. What is happening? She asked softly. We came to visit. Emery called, running to her without hesitation. Solon followed, and both girls wrapped their arms around Serial's thin frame. The alien woman embraced them carefully, almost reverently. She lifted her gaze to Darren, and tears welled along the glowing lines on her cheeks. "I was preparing to leave," she whispered. "Central Authority revoked my provisional status. I intended to request relocation. I didn't want to cause further disruption." "You're not a disruption," Darren said. "You're a person. There's a difference. They will separate you from your daughters," Serial said, voice trembling. "Maybe," Darren admitted. "But Emery and Solon wouldn't forgive me if I stood aside while you were pushed out like cargo." He stepped closer and offered his hand. "We're going to push back. All of us." A low hum rolled across the street. A transport glided toward them, marked with the emblem of Central Authority. The gathered colonists tensed. Darren instinctively moved the twins closer to Serial. The same two officials from the assembly descended the ramp. The woman stepped forward first. "This gathering violates active protocol," she announced. "Disperse immediately." "Write it down," the school teacher replied. "We're not hiding." The male official's gaze locked on Darren. "Mr. Darren, you were explicitly warned, and yet you persist." "Yes," Darren said. "I persist." "You are risking the custody of your children." "I'm protecting the kind of humans they grow up to be. That matters more." The official turned toward Serail. "And you were notified your status is under review. Remaining here constitutes what?" The mechanic cut in. "Existing where you're not wanted? Refusing to disappear on command?" "This is unproductive," the official snapped. "The protocols exist for a reason." "Then explain it," the medic called out. "Explain how friendship causes harm." The officials hesitated, caught between authority and the weight of staring eyes. "Cross-species. Cultural gaps create significant uncertainty," the female envoy finally said. "Unsupervised exchanges can lead to misunderstandings." "Like what?" Emery's voice rang out. She stepped away from Serial and positioned herself directly before the officials. Her small frame trembled, but her voice did not. "What bad thing do you think is going to happen?" The officials stared at her, unprepared for this small, fearless challenger. "Do you think Serial is dangerous?" Emery pressed. "We believe differences create complexities that should be managed with formal oversight," the envoy answered carefully. "That's not an answer," Emery said. "Those are just pretty words. Serial is kind. She teaches us games. She tells us stories from her world. She makes us feel less lonely." "How is that harmful?" "And she gives the best hugs," Solon added earnestly. "When we're sad, she holds us until we're okay." "How is that dangerous?" Silence swept the crowd. Two children were doing what the adults couldn't, cracking the armor of bureaucratic logic. "Your father should be your comfort," the envoy said gently. "He is," Emery replied. "But sometimes you need more than one person who cares." "Why is that wrong?" "It isn't wrong," the envoy said, and then realized what she had admitted. "It's complicated." "No," Solon said firmly. "It's not complicated. You're making it complicated because you don't like that we care about someone who doesn't look like us. But that's your problem, not ours." "Love." The word drifted into the warm amber air like a spark. Serail let out a soft, broken sound, half sob, half laugh. She lowered herself to her knees, bringing her face level with the twins. Her large blue hands framed their small cheeks. "You two," she whispered, her voice shaking, "are braver than anyone here." "We learned it from you," Emery said. "You stay even when people are cruel. You keep trying even when it hurts. That's what bravery looks like." Serial's breath hitched. She swallowed hard. "I think," she said softly, "that you both need a hug." The twins didn't answer with words. They simply leaned in, pressing themselves against her chest, their little arms straining to wrap around her as far as they could. And Serial held them, this exiled Rillery woman who had lost her homeland, her people, her place in the stars. She held these two human children who, despite everything, had decided she belonged with them. And in that breath of time, something subtle yet immeasurable shifted. Darren felt it like a pulse in the air. The engineer felt it, the doctor felt it. Even the two officials, rigid and unreadable a moment ago, faltered as if their polished bureaucracy had cracked under the weight of simple truth. Because here, in a half-forgotten district of a dusty frontier world, three fragile souls had chosen connection over fear, chosen affection over rules, chosen each other despite an entire system designed to keep them distant. The female official cleared her throat, her voice thinner than before. "This display does not alter the standing regulations." "No," Darren replied softly, "but it changes us. And if enough of us change, then the regulations will follow." The officials exchanged no rebuttal. They simply retreated to their transport, the engine humming as it pulled away, leaving the crowd still gathered, leaving Siriel still kneeling in an embrace, leaving undeniable proof that some bonds refuse to be categorized, restricted, or dismissed. When the twins finally released her, Siriel stayed on her knees, breathing unevenly. "Why?" she whispered, her translator giving shape to the tremble in her voice. "Why risk yourselves for me?" The engineer stepped forward, dust clinging to his boots. "Because someone has to remember that we were meant to rise above our worst instincts. And because the teacher nodded toward the girls, reminded us what we let slip away. That kindness doesn't need authorization. That compassion is a decision we make moment by moment." Siriel slowly rose, and Darren offered her his hand for balance. When she looked at him, there was recognition. Two souls displaced in different ways, yet anchored for a brief moment by the same fragile hope. "If they allow it," Siriel said quietly, "I will remain, because you have given me something I believed gone forever. You have given me purpose." "We need you too," Darren answered. "The three of us. Our world feels less empty with you in it." People drifted away in small groups, murmuring among themselves. The colony would not transform in a day. Centuries of fear would not evaporate with one act of defiance. But something had fractured in the rigid foundation of isolation. And through those fractures, something living could grow. The rest of the day unfolded gently. Darren, the twins, and Siriel shared food, played games, exchanged stories. The girls taught her about old Earth traditions. Siriel taught them soft, winding Relari lullabies that echoed like distant starlight. Darren watched them, watched the laughter and the gentleness, and felt pieces of himself stitching back together. By the time the twin suns dipped behind the ridgeline, casting long amber shadows across the refugee quarter, they knew it was time to leave. As Darren helped the girls into the vehicle, Emery turned back. "We'll come next weekend," she promised. "And every weekend after that," Solon added. Siriel nodded, warmth resonating even through the metallic hum of her translator. "I will be here," she said. Waiting, grateful. Home. The word clung to the air. On a world she had not been born to, surrounded by beings who looked nothing like her species, Siriel had found a place that, against reason, against regulation, felt like home. As Darren drove back across the quiet colony, his daughters asleep in the back seat, he realized salvation often arrives from the unlikeliest directions. Sometimes healing wears blue skin and carries the grief of worlds. Sometimes family forms not from bloodlines, but from the deliberate act of choosing each other, in a universe determined to keep them apart. The battle ahead wasn't finished, but something essential had changed. And in a galaxy fractured by difference, 3 humans and 1 alien had drawn a new dividing line, not between species, but between those who reach out and those who retreat into fear. And once drawn, that line refused to disappear. In the months that followed, more colonists added their voices to the quiet rebellion. Slowly, painfully, the Aurela's outpost shifted from a place where difference was merely tolerated to a place where it was welcomed. It began with 2 7-year-old girls who believed friendship mattered more than fear. It continued with a weary veteran who refused to teach his daughters that compassion should ever be conditional. And it endured because an alien refugee found the courage to remain visible, remain present, remain profoundly human in every way that counted.